Greetings, Tom Earl here. On this week's episode, we have author of Woven into the Fabric, Tsehai Essiebea Farrell. Check it out. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the celebration. We know you could be anywhere. So the fact that you are here means the world to us. Maybe you're listening, maybe you're watching the video. Either way, I bet you can sense that I have a genius amongst us. We have the amazing and powerful guest, Tsehai Essiebea Farrell, retired educator and author of Woven into the Fabric. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. How's everything going?
Everything's going well. Everything's going really great. The book has been out maybe a couple of months now. And so I've just been enjoying having it out of me and into the world.
What does that feel like?
You know, it feels like, some people compare it to having a baby. So some of my friends were saying, should you have a baby shower, register at Staples?
There you go.
I said, yeah, maybe so. But, the book took 21 years to finish. And so, elephant's baby, which baby takes that long,
Yes.
So, it just feels like unexpected feelings, I think, is that it feels like there's a lot of empty space inside that I was really carrying all of these things. And now I'm not carrying them anymore. I've actually put them in the book and they're now out in the world being shared with other people. And to me, that's so exciting.
That is amazing. And now we get to partake in the excitement that's been living inside of you.
Oh, yeah.
So for the folks listening,
Yes.
What can you share with them? What's the gist or a little teaser of what the book's about?
So I love the title is called Woven into the Fabric. And the subtitle is Into the Very Fabric of Our Lives, God is Woven, Spun Gold. And I think that really hits at the heart of the story. Like you have the stories going on, and in the heart of every story, you can find like golden strands, like things that pull the reader and the characters in the story, but pull you into a sense of timelessness, a sense of the things that are valuable and eternal. Yeah,
That is powerful.
yeah. So, I just talked to a man a couple of weeks ago who finished the book, and he said, it's like I started reading the book and it's like I entered the story and now I'm just caught on these golden threads.
Oh, wow.
And I said, caught on golden threads. I mean, that's lovely. So, yeah.
Is that a philosophy of yours in real life?
In real life, it really is that, into the fabric of our lives, God has woven spun gold, that there are things in life, people, situations, knowledge. I mean, just... when you touch upon something or you hear something that's coming from speaking from the eternal to the eternal in you, and it just like opens you up when you hear it. It just like that moment. It just like, I know that from forever. Like, yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah.
We're just a couple minutes in.
I'm loving goosebumps. I love goosebumps.
So the title has real life in it. Do any of the stories within the book have influences from
real life? Absolutely. And so there are two basic storylines in it. One is a modern day story and the other is an ancient story. And both of them are love stories. And, what I discovered as a writer over the years is that, love is one of those eternal things. So one of the storylines is back in ancient times, the love story between Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And in writing that story, once you get into, as a writer, the intimate moments of, what's not, we have an outline of it from books and from the Bible. But as a writer, once I started writing their story, who they were opened up. Their conversations, the sweetness of their love, their funniness, their magic, and so it's like you get to know them.
Yes.
So it's very, very sweet. And the other story is a modern day story, and it's about an African-American girl from Watts who wins a trip to 5 African countries, and she meets Emperor Haile Selassie, and he in turn introduces her to one of his grandsons, and she becomes engaged to the prince. And so it's kind of like a Cinderella type modern day story. And so you see the course of their love and how their love not only impacts them, but is impacted by the world events, and also how it impacts other people, and how there's something eternal about that connection it was meant for them, but we actually see in the story is also meant for broader things, for other people.
The way love impacts all those around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the two main storylines going on in the book?
Those are the two main storylines. You meet these young girls, both of them, I guess, around the same age, in their late teens, early 20s. And then we go all the way till middle age, till their kids are grown. And
so the King Solomon and Queen Sheba, that's a real story that it's based off of. Is the story of the young girl from Watts going to Ethiopia, is that based on a true story as well?
So that's based on my life. So initially, when I started writing the book in 96, it was going to be a memoir. It was just going to be the story of what actually happened to me. And, I could talk a little bit about that now. Well, maybe I'll add this to it, because one of the things that we follow in the life of the character that's like inspired by my life, her name is Brenna. They call her Brenna. And Makeda is the name of the Queen of Sheba's name is Makeda. So in my life and in the life of the story, I mean, it's very close, because it actually started, like I said, as a memoir. And 2 years into writing it, I was at the beach. So I was teaching school, and I in the summers was my main writing time. And so in the summer I was at the beach, and I would go out and I would put my quarters in to get 2 hours, and then I would go write for 2 hours. And one day I finished, and it was a first person narrative. This day when I finish, I just usually sit there and watch the water for a while. And I heard a voice, and the voice said, "I am with the Creator from the beginning. I am given patterns and sets of living strings. I am Destiny, the Weaver." And I said, whoa, whoa. And I had to write it down. I mean, I didn't think it didn't feel connected to anything, but it was like, wow, Destiny is a weaver. And she was given living strings. What are those? Are we strings in the hands of Destiny? It just made my mind just, so, I wrote it down, and then I left. And then usually Wednesday night, it was summer, so maybe about a week later when I was writing that summer, I was writing, and then I noticed that I was calling the character in the story that was inspired by me. I was calling her she instead of I, which had been the first person narrative. But I would call her she, and I was wondering as I was writing, because I couldn't write I anymore. Then she did this, and she did that, and it was like, something's going on. Now, my first 2 years of writing the story, I was in a writer's workshop with the writer and teacher, Dina Metzger. And one of the things that stayed with me the entire time was that she said, now, if you're lucky, when you're writing, the book will kind of take over. Yeah. And strange things will happen. And just go with it and trust the process because something else is going on. So that's what I thought of when the book started. I started writing and I couldn't write I had to write she. So I said, okay, something strange is going on, but let me trust this. Let's see where this goes. And that's when the story, remember, I'd been writing for 2 years, but then all of a sudden the story went back in time. And from my point of view, when I'm writing, I am in the characters and looking out from her eyes. And I'm wondering really, who is this person? Because, she's obviously in a different environment, like a stone room, a large stone room. And she opens the door and the woman says something like, your queen mother and father would like to see you in the throne room. And be sure to wear, and it was a particular dress. And I'm thinking as the writer, who is this? Who has shown up in my story? And so at any rate, I just followed her down, and I'm seeing through her eyes, and, she's dressed, she enters the throne room, and there are her parents sitting on thrones, clearly a king and a queen. And she's a little nervous because they don't normally ask her to dress formally to come be with him.
Yes.
And so she goes in and her mother says, Makeda. And I have to stop as a writer because I know that's the name of the Queen of Sheba. And so I said, oh, the Queen of Sheba has entered the story. And so that's how she entered. And so I just followed it. So then it was like, okay, so something else is taking over the story. I mean, really, it was probably months, if not a year later, that I realized that the narrator was Destiny. She took over. That's when Makeda came in. That was Destiny taking over. And the narrative switched from a first-person narrative to a third-person narrative. And in the first-person narrative, you could only hear Brehenna's thoughts. You had this one character's thoughts. But as soon as Destiny took over, we were inside her mother's head, the king's head, anybody's head that Destiny wanted to go into, she was in their head. And so it was very exciting to have all these insights that, quite frankly, I didn't have. But as a writer, something else was opened and accessed that was beyond just the normal me.
Sounds like it was a spiritual experience as well.
Oh, it was. It was absolutely a 21-year spiritual experience. And I remember when I kind of got through the first draft, I was talking to Dina, my writing teacher, and, I said, I think I'm finished writing the book. And she said, but is the book finished writing you?
Ooh.
Well, it was 10 years later that it actually came out. It has a life of its own. And the life is very, very rich. I had some little taste of what other people got from the book along the way. Because even when when the book was not finished yet, but some lovely parts of it was there. I remember one woman had a going away party. She was moving to Israel, and she asked if I could share one of the chapters, from my book that I had shared with her friends. And it was about the Solomon's women. We call them all as concubines, and they were very gifted. So there's like a big dance and occasion in this fantastic garden that is just full of all the, peacocks, cockatoo, beautiful birds, the orchids, flowers from every part of the world, waterfalls, pools to swim in. It just was the most magical, enchanting place that he had built for these women. And he had also been instructed by God that when you see a woman that shines like this, like he was out among the people one day in the countryside in the middle of the day, and he's under like a little tent, and they just came out to see the king, And he's looking out among the people, and just in the middle of the day with a bright Judean sun, there's someone in the crowd glowing with a glow that's rivaling the sun.
Wow.
And so when he sees that, he notices it way back in the throngs. And as soon as he does, the angel of the Lord comes to him and says, and the Lord says, whenever you see a woman that glows like this, you will take her into your household. So he had them bring her in, and he invited the woman in, and she came in, and she was pure magical. Her magic showed up in her voice, which was healing, peace giving, any quality that was out of balance, her voice could balance it. And so when I shared that chapter at the dinner for my friend, one of the ladies who I had not met before, I saw her like in a mall, maybe 6 months later. So she said, "Aren't you the one who talked about the king's garden?" I said, "Yeah." So she said, "You know what?" She said, "When you read that, it just felt like I was there." She said, "And so ever since then," she said, "it's like my soul lives in that garden."
Wow.
She said, "And the funny thing about it, until that time, I didn't know that my soul had been homeless." And I said, "Well, book, you do have a life of your own." My. Because I just felt as a writer, if one woman's soul could find a home, then the whole book was worth it just for that one thing. Yeah.
I was going to ask, what does that feel like to hear someone share that?
It went right to my heart. And I just felt that the book had a healing and redemptive presence, and that for me as the writer, all along the way, it was very important for me to, I say translate it, because I would see it in my spirit, and it was like I would see it, and then I would have to write it, but I would have to write it with a certain kind of precision. And so when whatever I was experiencing in my spirit matched what was on the page, it felt kind of like a tuning fork. There would be a vibration that said, "You've got it, it matches, so you can go on." And so the quality of it was, my prayer for the book was that I'll give you an instance of a shift that I had to make as a writer, because as I was an English major at Stanford, and I was an English teacher, and I was a coach for English teachers the last 10 years of my career. And so we were always taught that, what makes a good descriptive passage in a book is the details. So I was up against that, and in the book, I was writing about King Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, which was brand new at the time of the story, and it was incredible. And so I said, okay, so details. So I went to the Bible. So in the Bible, there's like a whole section of the Bible, because in fact, God was the architect. He said, so many cubics, this is made out of this kind of acacia wood. This is made out of this is bronze. This is gold. He just laid out. He was the architect and designer of the temple. So, and it was measurement by measurement. So I just kept reading it over and over and over and over. And then I found I'm reading this over and over and again, but I can't see the temple. I can't see it. Even though I have all these details, which I thought make something clear to the reader, it wasn't making it clear to me. So, I was backed up into a corner, and so I had to pray, and I just asked. I said, "So, okay, Lord, what I'm reaching for is that not just that it's a good description of the temple. I want my reader to be in the temple. I want them to be there. So if that kind of writing is possible, then help me write like that. And so, and so then, I just waited and this took 21 years. So,
Yes.
so that I took the leisure with it, or what I call the necessary time, because maybe 2 or 3 years in, there was a director interested in making a movie, and they wanted me to write the book and like that. But as soon as I was in that, it just felt like I know how I'm about my word. So if I give my word that I'll have a book in a year, I will have a book in a year.
Yeah.
Now, is it the book that's in my soul trying to come out? That was a little scary, because I wouldn't be sure that it would be, because I would be up against my word and I would deliver something okay, but it probably wouldn't be this. It wouldn't be this.
It would have restricted the journey.
It would have restricted the journey. It would have tied it to something else. And I didn't want to tie it to anything. So I decided, this is my first novel. It has a genuine origin, a genuine spirit. Let the spirit live and unfold in its own way, in like a really natural way. So that's what I did. And, it ended up taking 21 years. And, but it was wonderful. So that meant when I was asking about how to write so that the people are present in the temple in Jerusalem, I didn't have to rush to get the answer. I mean, there might be weeks when I would keep checking in my spirit to see, is there something there on that question?
Yeah.
And if it's not, I would just wait for it. And then, at some point I checked and it was like, start here. You will have Solomon and Makeda at the temple door, and you will invite her in, and the reader will experience it from her point of view, what she saw and felt. And as soon as we did that, it worked. And so, of course, as soon as I finished the chapter, I had to read it to somebody, because I had to see and I didn't tell them why. I said, just let me share this with you. And I read it, and their response was, and they didn't know that's what I was after, was, wow, I was there. I said, yes, I wanted them to be there. I so wanted them to be there. Mm-hmm.
Really sounded like an asking you shall receive.
Yes, it really was. It really was. And I think that's one of the threads in the story was, and I'll switch to real life, and so when the readers read the story, they'll know, oh yeah, she said what happened in real life. It's a little altered maybe in the story, but the spirit of it's there. But the story begins, and in real life, I was a freshman at Stanford, and one day I was walking across the quad, and we have a big memorial church on campus, and there's a big mural at the top of the church. And as you're walking across campus, you can see it in the sky. It's like a biblical scene, and the sky is like gold leaf. And so that particular day, I'm walking, and I just looked up across campus and saw the church and the mural. Just as I looked, the sun hit the gold.
Wow. And
it kind of glinted in my eye, and I just did like that. And as soon as I did that, I heard a voice say, "You're going to Africa." And I was just 17, but I've always been spiritual, and I've always listened when, I think I hear something. I would always kind of incline toward it. And so when that happened, it just felt like I'm going to Africa. It just felt like I was, in fact, going. And so that evening, I told my boyfriend that, I'm going to Africa. He said, I want to go too. So he just said, he knows me. And he said, you need a plan. We need a plan. So he said, okay, next year, our sophomore year, we'll take a year of Italian. And then our junior year, we'll go to Stanford in Italy. And they're cheap flights from Florence down to Sierra Leone for spring break. That's how we'll do it. So he said it. He was so excited. It was such a plan. And so I just kind of checked inside, when he said it, and just asked myself inside, is that the way? And there was no answer. And so no answer to me at that time meant, it didn't matter that, it's all kinds of free choice that we have in our lives. And so there was nothing that was said about it. So I said, okay, well, all right, let's do it. So in fact, we did take a year of Italian, our sophomore year. And then by our junior year, he and I had broke up. And so I was trying to figure out, am I still going? So when I did my little prayer, when it was time to turn in your application, it just came no. No. So I didn't go. And then he and I were still friends, even though we broke up. So I remember my junior year, after spring break, I get a box from him from Africa. And he sent me a box of 3 huge pieces of African fabric and postcards from Africa. And so it's wow, the postcards were fabulous because I had never seen authentic postcards from Africa. So the people, the animals, the foliage, the mountains, the landscape, everything. And it was I'm looking at all this and it just felt wow, they all fit together. And, I found out that there's a word for it, autochthonous, which is, it means basically from the same earth. And I didn't realize, because I'm from Los Angeles, in our major little tree that reminds everyone of Los Angeles, of course, the palm tree, which is not even native here. So, and then you have people from all over the world here. So I had not really been in an experience an autochthonous environment until I saw those cards where everything, the animals, the people, the scenery, the plants, everything were from the same earth. And they looked like they belonged together. It was really quite a lovely, stunning moment. Deep. And so, of course, with the fabric, immediately I took it out and I started racking African dresses, my head, and just strolling around in front of the mirror, prancing in my African stuff. And I was having fun. And then it came to mind, he's in Africa and I'm not. Why don't I feel bad? And I don't feel bad. It just feels like it's not my trip, so I just kept playing with the fabrics and then I put them away. So, after, indulging myself and having fun, I folded everything up and put it back in the box. And as soon as I finished and closed the box, that voice that I'd heard 2 years before, it came back and it repeated itself. Same everything. It's this. You're going to Africa. Then it added, soon. So, yeah. So there were some magical things happening. And, there was a beauty pageant and that I wasn't even going to be in. But Spirit said, yeah, you are. And, I ended up being in this pageant. And, one of my sisters had won the pageant some years before. And the Miss Watts pageant. And, so it was just I used to run for student council. I was student body office. So it just felt like community service. Yeah. And so I said, well, okay, if you're saying, yes, I'm going to run this year, then it's my year for community service, So it's not a problem. But then, 2 weeks before the pageant, they announced that the grand prize for Miss Watts this year, and it was truly grand, is an all-expense paid trip to 5 African countries.
Wow.
As guest of the heads of state, Emperor Haile Selassie, President Jomo Kenyatta, President Tanzania, Nigeria, and Ghana. It was the voice came back as soon as she announced it and said, that's your trip. So, I knew I was going to win then because, the voice, is not, it's not a regular voice and it's not just, blowing smoke. It literally is the voice, you know. So I knew I was going to win. And then a funny thing, so when you said it's like, you know, if you asked, when I got after I won, you know, I got the itinerary, meeting with Emperor Haile Selassie, audience with Haile Selassie. You're going to a ball. You're going to the parliament. You're going here, Jomo Kenyatta. You're going to the State House. Here, there's a ball. There's this. So I immediately said to Bonnie, who was over the prizes when she was showing me the itinerary, I'm a senior in college. I don't have clothes for this. And so she said, you haven't even looked at all of your prizes. And she opened up the little prize book and look. Disneyland costume department is making your wardrobe.
What?
Yes. So it's like, oh my. I said, so they were really my fairy godmother for that trip.
Yes.
And they made the, and so I said, well, how are we going to do that? So she said, look at your prizes. So I said, how am I even going to get back from Stanford to do all this stuff? And so she said, Hertz Rent-A-Car is giving you a free car every time you come into town from school. Just pick it up at the airport. PSA is flying you free your whole Miss Watts year, so you can come back home, get your car, and go on out to Disneyland and do your fittings. And so it's like, so for that period, it was like not even asking. It was the one where before you ask, I've already answered. Yeah. So it was like in that, and it just was a very smooth, and it was like just before the trip, I was saying a few weeks before the trip, I was saying, but you know what? I don't even have any money to take on the trip. Oh, this Saturday, the Mothers of Watts are having a nightclub fundraiser for you to have spending money.
Oh my gosh.
So it's truly, you know, I knew I was into a sacred, magical space, you know, because of the quality and, you know, in the book. And I think that's what I like people to get from the book. One of my experiences and belief is it's to our benefit that we listen for that guidance, that internal guidance, and that we follow it. So I remember when I was really young, I didn't know, because you had all these thoughts, you had all this other stuff going on in your mind. So I couldn't tell the guidance from other thoughts. But usually the guidance was a little bit strange, I would say strange, or it was not something that I would have thought of myself. You know how you know your own thoughts?
Yes.
This was like a stray thought or something like that is not of me. So, so whenever I would have one of those, I would think, maybe this is guidance. So, how I decided to deal with it was I would just take a few steps, slow steps in the direction of that. And usually what would happen is if it is like real spiritual guidance, then it starts getting help, like people, ideas, whatever comes, help comes.
Yes.
If you turn in that direction. So, so that's how I've always been. And so this whole journey of woven into the fabric, you see Brehenna, the character, just following. She's getting these little pieces of guidance and she's following, and the roads are opening and the trail of her life is expanding because she's following.
I love how both in this interview it's kind of replicating the book, where we're weaving in real life and fiction and spiritual. That's amazing.
Good. That's good.
For folks listening that are resonating with whatever we call it, alignment, manifesting, being able to tap into that inner guidance that connects you here to the infinity.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for them on doing that?
And one is, I think it's our responsibility. I think it's actually a primary responsibility of human beings to discover for yourself how is Spirit, the eternal God, how are you being communicated with? What is the path that it comes through you? And so trying to be quiet enough inside and in your environment so that you can recognize it and then honor it. Don't just toss it and say, oh, that's weird. Don't do that. Reserve some in a sacred place in yourself. And if you don't know how to deal with it, ask. Make this a little clearer for me. Show me the way. I'm willing, and then just make sure that you set aside some time in your day, and it doesn't have to be a lot of time, but some time where you have time to yourself, and or in your week where you have time to yourself, a walk or something in nature or something like that, just so that you're in touch with, because this regular world, it will make you so busy until you will be so busy until you will forget. If you just stay busy your whole life, you will forget that there are other worlds, there are other dimensions, there are other domains that are really, like where we're coming from dwells within us and where we're going. There are things eternal about us that we don't have to wait till we die to experience. That it actually enriches the quality of our life now. And also, if you're like with the book, 21 years, was something that I knew I had to do, and the second year I was writing, Spirit said to me, finish the book. The book is the bridge to the rest of your life. I said, when that came to me, I said, that settles that. There's no way in my imagination that Spirit can say, here's the rest of your life that I want for you. And in order to get there, you're going to have to build this bridge called the book. But it also suggested if you don't build it, you'll never get to the life that I have set aside for you. And it was like, there's no way that I'm not going to build that bridge. Doesn't matter how long or what it takes for me to do it. I will build that bridge. And now, as we sit here, I'm in the rest of my life that Spirit has designed.
What a blessing.
Yeah. Oh, God. What a relief.
It doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, though, but it doesn't sound, though, that it was an anxious journey.
Not at all. It wasn't. It was, I lived the book. We lived together. We were, there's a funny thing with the book, because when I gave Dina like a copy of the first manuscript, and she said, she was writing a book at the time. She said, I probably won't get to it for a while, but I'm so happy that you got, the first draft. And I said, take your time, no problem. And then 2 days later, she called me. And so she said, your book? She said, yes. She said, I had some guests here from filmmakers here, and they were doing a movie that dealt with the Ark of the Covenant. She said, they were speaking about it in a way like, you imagine what it'd be to find all that gold and what it's worth and da-da. She said, and it was almost insulting my spirit. She said, because I realized the most that I know about the Ark of the Covenant was from your book. And how it was held in such a sacred way by Solomon and Makeda and you as a writer. She said, so I only knew the sacred, and it just felt so
sacrilegious.
Sacrilegious, a good word. Sacrilegious how they were talking about it. She said, and then all of a sudden I start speaking about the Ark of the Covenant in ways that I didn't know that I knew. She said it was just coming out of me. But she said, and they just got really still, and they just they shifted. And they said, you know what, you're right. She said, because they were having a lot of accidents on the set. And they said, and maybe because we're not holding it in a sacred space. And, so she said, everything altered. She said, and it was like in myself, she said, I was thinking, how did I know all that? She said, and then I didn't even know where you had put the manuscript. When I looked down on the table that was right before me, there was the manuscript.
What?
She said, so I had to call you to say to you that your book has a life of its own. And so it's like, oh, thank thank you. And I got off the phone, so I was dancing around and I was saying, go girl, you have a life of your own. And I'm just singing my little dancing song and I was so excited. And then a voice said, go girl. Mm. And I thought, what does that mean? Go girl. And so for me, whenever I have like something that comes up that I have no idea what the answer to is, I sometimes will pose a sentence, like a fill-in sentence. Mm-hmm. And so if I say it, maybe something will fill in by the end. So I said, okay, so if you're not a girl, then perhaps you are a boy. And if you were a boy, you would be... And then Johannes came in. Mm. And Johannes was the name that the prince and I were going to name our first son. Mm. And I said, Johannes? I said, is that you? He said, yes. I said, son, you're a book. And he said, well, mother, you didn't give me much choice. Mm. And he said, and mother, I bring many gifts. Mm. Mm.
Wow.
Yeah. So not just a book, it has a life of its own. And the life is the life of my son, Johannes. Mm.
Well, I can imagine that's very personal and vulnerable to share. So we appreciate that gift. Mm-hmm. Feel blessed for that.
Thank you. I didn't know if it would come up, but it did. So I'm happy to share it. And I'm happy that he made his way here in the form of the book.
Feels like you and the book are a conduit of alignment.
I like
everyone
that.
Who comes in like that story of first she tapped into your alignment and then shared it with them and then they shared it to their whole set.
Yeah. I had a friend I went to Stanford with, and he just read the book. We were just really Facebook friends. I haven't seen him in like 40 years. And, he sent me a message. Oh, I got to have you come up to my city to do some speaking around this book. So then I gave him my number. When we talked, he said, he had lost his wife this year, wife of 47 years. He said all year, last year now, all year long, he said, I've just been in grief. And this was in November, so she died like in March. He said, I've just been grieving all year. He said, and something just told me to read your book. I normally don't even read, fiction. He said, but I read it, and he said, there's something healing in your book because it just lifted me out of grief. It lifted me out of grief.
That's powerful.
It's powerful. And I said, yay.
And something that what we've been talking about this whole time, the part that you tapped into, probably is saying, I knew all along.
I knew all along. Yes, and yay.
Y'all say powerful. I say obvious.
Yeah, it's like, because what I feel is that the spirit that wanted to be here, to bring whatever it's bringing, that, it required a vehicle. And I'm just so pleased. And it makes certain things in my life make sense. Like from forever, when I was a little girl, it just was always on my mind about, I love words. I love words, meaning. This is a funny story. When I met who was going to be my husband, the first birthday gift that he gave me, he asked, what did I want? And I said, anything? He said, yeah. I said, well, if I could have anything, I would like an Oxford English Dictionary. And so that's what he got me. So it was really funny because years later, my ex-husband was a politician. And so his chief of staff, like years later, told me, he said, yeah, when we heard that the councilman was, had a new girlfriend, it was like, anybody met her? Anybody seen her? No, not yet. And then he asked me, he said, could you go pick up, I got a birthday gift for you. Could you go pick it up for me, and deliver it to her house? And so everybody was trying to jump in there. He said, so, but he's telling me this now. He said, so I told the boss, no, I'll get it, And he said, because I really wanted to meet you.
Yeah.
So he said, so then I'm thinking I'm going, it's in Beverly Hills, I'm thinking I'm going to fur, jewelry, something like that. And then I go and I'm looking for the address, and it's like this dusty old bookstore. He said, this old man come from the back, and he said, oh yes, I have the Farrell books. And he comes out with these heavy books, and they had condensed them into this big 2-volume set that had this little drawer with a magnifying glass in it. He said, I'm getting it, and he said, I was dreading. He said, oh my God. What kind of woman is this? And he said, I brought it to your house. And he said, I don't know what I was expecting. He said, then this cute little woman stepped in. But yeah, so.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that was cute. That was funny. I said, but that really was what I. So the interest was in words. Like it just felt like for your life, words will be important. So, and whenever I would read literature, that's probably why I was an English major, and just find something that was written beautifully. It was just, I'd read it over and over again because it was, yes, this could not be said any better than this, And so then I saw it manifest when I was writing Woven, because what I was given was not in words. It was in images or a feeling or something. And I had to clothe whatever was coming from spirit in words. And fortunately, I had garnered sufficient words that when things came, they came through and they were clothed in words.
Mm. Mm-hmm. 2 more questions for you.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Of course.
First one out of the 2 is for folks who have a dream, an ambition, the seed of an idea that may become their bridge to the rest of their life. What advice can you offer them in terms of having patience rather than having that dream become a burden or a source of anxiety?
So I would say that instead of seeing the dream as something imposed on you or something to reach for like that you are the dream. You are it. It is natural. It is emanating through you, from you, towards you. It's you. So there's and I don't know who you might know who says this, but there's a saying that if you can bring out and manifest what's in you, it will save your life. And if you don't bring it out, it will destroy you. So there's something in each of us, or many things, but there's something only that has been with you forever. And it's like you just follow it. Just follow it. Just find a way to follow it. And I'll just say, sometimes you can't devote everything to it. Like with the book, I lived in Israel. I'm a dual citizen, American and Israeli. And when I came back from Israel, I got a job teaching in a high school. And that was the same year I started writing the book. Well, once you take in 175 teenagers and carry them for the whole year, and you carry them all the time in your spirit, there's not a lot of room for writing of the book. So I only wrote Wednesday nights in Dina's writing class and summer vacations. And but that was sufficient. A woman asked me at the book launch about writing. And one of the things I said to her that I discovered with a lot of people in writing, because a lot of people express that, when I'm writing something, it just jumps out and I have to grab a napkin or, scribble it down on whatever's at hand, like that. And it's like that happens because you haven't set aside a time and a place for your writing. that your writing has to come out whenever it is, because your writing is homeless. It's homeless. And a home for the spirit of writing or creativity is coming through. A home just means you set aside some designated space and time. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you do have to keep your word. If you keep your word to your writing, and if you say, like in my case, I'm going to write Wednesday night, in writing class, then I didn't have my writing jumping out all the time. Occasionally something would seep out, but mainly when it knew it had a home, when every Wednesday night I wrote, then that whole, the writing is like, can I get out here? None of that was there. It was calm. The spirit of writing was calm. It trusted me. So give your writing a home so that it's not homeless, and give it, you say what it is. You say, okay, I can write Saturday morning. There was a point when I was writing where I was getting up at 3:00 in the morning, like 3 to 5. It was quiet. It was nice. And there you go. So you say what it is, and then just make sure you keep your word. Because if you don't keep your word to your writing, it'll keep popping out because it doesn't trust you.
I resonate with that so deeply. That was an aha moment for me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome, because it's homeless. And that hurts my heart when I think about that someone's writing could be homeless and is just asking you for give me that, so I'm not desperate. And this journey, like you were saying, it wasn't a desperate journey. It was allowing things to unfold the way they would through me. And like Dina said, the book wasn't finished writing me. I'm not the same woman I was. I'm 21 years older when I started writing it. And there's so much experience that, I needed to grow into and become. And, it's like my ability to be a source for the eternal to come through those years. I mean, it was always there, but it just did this. You just come on through. You want to come now? Come on. Yeah.
Last question for you. If you could write a letter to yourself 21 years ago, as you were typing the first word of this book, what might you tell that person?
I think I would tell her, don't look at this just as your writing. Look at it as your life. So this is a living work, and you're living through the work. So don't think of it as a separate thing. There's something funny that happened on the way too, because I remember sometimes, in the course of writing, like I would finish teaching on a Friday and facing a weekend, and I would look up and I would say, oh, golly, I don't even have plans for the weekend. And I would think, dog, and then but I know who does. The Queen of Sheba always had exquisite plans. And so I would go to my, first my tablet, then my typewriter, and last my computer. All those years it did those transformations. And I would sit and I would spend the weekend writing. And she had some of the I can't even say we had some of the most incredible experiences. And for me, like when I went back to, school on Monday, it was like, we were at the Dead Sea getting massages with the mud and the salts, and, we had our hair done by, 6 maidens who were exquisite, and we saw Solomon, and I had a lovely weekend.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Power of the imagination.
Power. And it's like, it's a funny thing because now I wouldn't even call it imagination. It's not imagination. It's literally, there are other domains and dimensions that are available to us, and we can move across them and abide in them and there's a domain with a lot of gifts for us here. And if you open up to it, you can actually go into the domain and bring, artists bring things, singers, writers, anybody who creates. You're bringing things from another domain and you're translating them into a way that they can be received in this domain through your gifts.
I'm really appreciative you clarified that, because even when I said it, I felt imagination is just not the right word for what we've been talking about.
No, because it's like, and it's because you're really not there. You can make things up. Like I know when I'm making something up, like just making it up, there's a difference between that and when I am sourcing something from another domain. That needs to be. And once it's translated into this domain, it not only spreads by somebody buying and reading the book. It's like whatever the spirit is in the book, it's here. Mm-hmm. It's here. And people can actually get it watching the video, or just it's now in this dimension. Mm-hmm.
I mean, this interview in and of itself felt like a spiritual experience.
I'm so glad.
and that's why we want you to take it from just listening, just watching, to we want to invite you to find gold that is woven into your fabric. So I know I'm inspired. So we hope that you are inspired. You feel the calling to read this book. And who's this on the cover? This is an amazing cover.
Well, actually, that's me. What? When I was 21. When I was Miss Watts, that's one of my Miss Watts pictures. And so that's the girl that got to go to Ethiopia and meet the emperor and get engaged to his grandson. So
21 keeps coming up.
21, I know.
That's cool.
That's cool. That's true. 21 years for the book and 21 years when
on the cover.
I hadn't thought of that.
Wow.
That's 21.
I'm going to have to read page 21 here when you leave.
I know, and see what's happening with 21. I don't know.
Where can folks find this book and bring it into their life?
It's available on Amazon.com, and just look it up, Woven into the Fabric. And if you want to know a little bit more about it, if you click on my name on that page, it will take you to the author's page where you'll learn a little bit more background. And also, I put the book up for preview. So there's about 5 or 6 chapters that you can preview, just on the Amazon, book page.
Nice.
Yeah.
And
so
do they all come with this amazing bookmark, or is
they
this special?
do not. This is special.
Okay.
So if you ever come to any of my book signings or anything, you will get one of these lovely little bookmarks.
These are very nice.
Yeah. So.
And if you're driving, if you're out and about, weren't able to write all that down, of course, all the show notes with the link for the Amazon book and the author page are all found at this week's episode, tommerl.com/Tsehai, which is spelled Tsehai, tommerl.com/Tsehai. And you can find all of that, all the links and everything like that as well. Can I include your email in case folks want to say hi?
Just my Tsehai, Tsehai 7 at AOL.com.
And we'll have that in the show notes. So if there is something you feel called to follow up with and spread the joy. Any last thoughts?
Well, I've loved it. And as we spoke before the show, I said, I think you asked me, what I want the experience to be like after we finish, that I would feel like happy about this and that. And I said that it felt like we went on a journey. And so we did.
Yes, indeed.
That's how I felt. So
I did too.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
I felt for me, there's truths that I got answered I didn't even realize I was asking.
Wow.
So.
Yay.
Let us know what you thought.
Yeah.
Comment below. Share this with some friends. Post it on your Facebook. Please spread the word. Get this book out there and allow this interview to be a tool and opportunity for that as well. So,
thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was very sweet.
Same here. And to you at home listening, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. We did it!
We did it. Yay!